Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast with Mike and Mike. Sales is a thinking process. This podcast will help you learn about what works in sales, how to hone your skills, and increase your success. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and this week we've got a special guest joining us. We've got Mike Connor and Mike Simmons, of course, but we also have Jen Spencer. Mike, tell us how you met Jen Spencer.
So I was first introduced to Jen through a podcast that she had with Allbound, and I followed her on Twitter for a while, and then actually found out that someone in our network, Ira, had known Jen for a while and asked for an introduction. And one thing led to another, and here we are. Jen's been gracious enough with her time to join us on the podcast. Jen, can you share a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure can. Thanks so much for having me. It's great after being a podcast host for the last year. It's kind of fun to be on the other side of the equation. So thank you. So I'm now the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for SmartBug Media, which is a growth marketing agency. We are a HubSpot Diamond Partner, one of the highest rated partners in the ecosystem. And it was exciting for me to join the team. I've worked with SmartBug as a client for a number of years. And so I'm looking forward to the work I'm going to be doing with them now. Most recently, I was VP of Sales and Marketing over at Allbound, which you mentioned. And Allbound is a software as a service platform for organizations who sell with and through partners. And whether that's like channel partners, resellers, or referral partners. And had a chance to really help build up that business and work and learn about a lot of the way that a lot of agencies are collaborating with SaaS vendors to expand their business opportunities.
Awesome. So just for context and kind of to set up the general discussion, a lot of what we're going to talk about today is in the context of partnerships. Partnerships are near and dear to my heart. I've had a chance to manage partner relationships where they've made up a significant amount of the revenue that the organization has generated. So they had a higher amount of revenue generated than the direct sales team. I've been involved in partnerships where it's a significantly lower percentage of the total revenue that the organizations have generated, and have actually seen that transition occur. I feel like I've learned more about what not to do with partnerships than what to do with partnerships over that time period. And there are just so many different ways that you can kind of screw things up. So Jen, can you share with us some lessons learned when it comes to partnerships? What are some of the most important things, most important perspectives to keep?
I think when it comes to partnerships and you're building, whether it's new alliances or developing like a channel of resellers or referral partners, I think it's best to focus on what business outcome are you looking for? Are you looking to expand into a new market, a new vertical? Are you looking to just really expand your sales force and it's going to have to pay to grow an internal sales team, but rather sort of outsource those sales? Is there another region, another country, another part of the world where you think your product could do very well in, but you need some feet on the street who are culturally aligned in that region? What are you really looking for? What are you trying to achieve? And then I think the second piece is, how are you going to know if you're successful? What does that really look like? Is it increased revenue? Is it increased booking, expansion? And focus on metrics that actually are going to mean something for your business. A lot of organizations, when they're first building partner programs, they'll focus on, well, we're going to go from having 2 partners to 20 partners, or from 20 partners to 60 partners. And that's all, well and good. And definitely bringing new partners on will help contribute to your growth. But that's actually the wrong KPI to be focused on, because you could have 60 partners and that can mean absolutely nothing good for your business, in a worst case scenario. So I think those two things, what's the goal? What are you hoping to achieve, and how are you going to measure it?
Well, and when you talk about 60 partners, channel conflict starts to scare me to death. So I think the highlight there is beginning with the end in mind, knowing what your business objectives are, being able to clearly articulate what those outcomes are, and then designing based on that.
Yeah, actually, a thought came to mind as both of you were describing that. One is people really focus on getting or acquiring partners, acquiring channels, and it's all about the start of the relationship. And what I've seen, you set these partner networks up and with good intentions from all parties, and then execution sometimes isn't there. And then you end up with this whole swack of partners where nothing happens. I'm wondering, do people think about partnerships with the end in mind from the perspective of how long is it going to make sense for us to have partnerships? And what does it look like post partnership? Like, is it just, do people head into these things thinking, oh, it's just going to be forever, it's going to be great, it's just going to grow? Or do we look at it as a vehicle to get us from point A to point B, and we know what point B looks like, and therefore at some point the partnership is probably not going to make sense?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. And I think there's many, channel partner leaders who will tell you that there's times where they have to break up with a partner where the goals are now not aligned. And I think the way you figure that out is just by constantly collaborating and constantly communicating. So when you go to launch your partnership, having it detailed in writing, what does success look like between us and our partner, right? So, okay, the first thing I mentioned was you have to know what success looks like for you as the organization, right? But then when you bring a partner on board, what does success look like for you and for that partner? And hopefully those goals are centered around your common customer and what's best for the customer. And as you're keeping that in check and you're communicating regularly, right? Not once a year, not twice a year, but with a very regular cadence, the same way you would with your internal sales team, you will either evolve and grow together, or you might grow apart. And if you grow apart and suddenly you and your partner aren't going after the same thing anymore, that's okay. And it's better to just recognize that and to part ways. And, rather than keep a partner on who's really not helping you meet your goals. And because that ultimately is going to tarnish your relationship.
You mentioned relationship. How often do you see partnerships where the one who's trying to initiate the partnership is just so focused on themselves where they don't really consider what's important to the partner or why that partner may want to work with them?
Oh my gosh, all the time. It's kind of a big problem, especially when it comes to, I think, referral partnerships, which we're seeing a lot of in SaaS right now. So the biggest challenge, the thing I'll hear, and I usually hear it out of the mouth of like a CEO. Okay. So not the person who's actually managing the partnership, but from like the head of the organization, I'll say, what your referral partners, what do they get out of referring business to you? Oh, well, they get commission, 10% commission, 15, maybe 25%, if it's really lucrative. Like, okay, great. So they're making, let's say, upwards of 25% on SaaS revenue for what? Recurring? They're like, oh no, just for the year. Okay. So, and they should just keep referring business to you because of that. And the CEO thinks, yes, they should. And unfortunately, that's not what's going to keep a partner referring business. What's going to keep a partner referring business to you is if you're actually helping solve a problem for their common customer, or if that partner is able to build additional business services that are associated with the product that they're referring. That is where the real money is for them and where there's some good customer success metrics for them. It's not just about having like an extra couple hundred or couple $1,000s of cash every year coming in the door.
Yeah, you highlight a really important point there. It's not just about the top line revenue that's generated on the partner side, the commission that comes in. There's a lot of other baggage there. There's, how well does this increase our connection with the customer base? Does it create more problems than it solves? Is the revenue worth it? If I'm bringing in a partner whose product doesn't deliver on expectations, am I potentially putting my entire customer base at risk for the sake of generating a couple of points? So this is kind of a good transition into where have you seen partnerships that have the best intentions on the front end and look like they're set up for success ultimately fail because they forgot to do X, Y, or Z? What's the X, Y, or Z that they forget to do?
I think what they forget to do is they forget to treat their partners, this from the vendor perspective, right? They forget to treat their partners like a natural extension of their own sales and marketing teams. So they put a wall up between themselves and the partner. And that wall might be something like, it might be data or analytics that they have that a partner could make use of. It could be marketing content. It could be sales enablement. It could be, just like failures. Honestly, I mean, I see a lot of organizations that are happy to share their successes with their partners and, hey, look what we did and this was so great and this is what you can learn from. But honestly, a bigger place for your partners to learn is from what you attempted and what didn't work. And so it's about like not being afraid to just kind of pull back those curtains and expose yourself a little bit to those partners, really treat them like your internal sales team. What would you do for the salespeople you have working in your building right now, or your marketing team you have working in your building right now? And if you're not offering the same type of support and exposure to your partners, then you're keeping something really important from them. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things. And it's because a lot of organizations are like, is my partner, they're kind of a customer, but they're kind of an employee, but they're kind of not, like it can be a very, very gray area, which I totally get. But I would lean towards treating them more like an internal team member and less like a customer.
Yeah. As you say that, I can completely relate with that based on not just partner relationships that we have, but client relationships where we are that partner that they're hiring to bring in to work directly with the CEO and work directly with the team in a lot of cases. And sometimes, in some cases, we manage the organization on their behalf. And it's always that dance at the beginning of that relationship to figure out, where are the boundaries? Where are the things that the CEO is going to feel comfortable with or not comfortable with? We've had both ends of the spectrum where a CEO just is completely transparent, gives us complete access to everything in their company. I mean, there is no wall. There's no firewall. It's built on trust and a relationship, and they know that we're there to help. And we become part of that organization. And then we've got the other extreme where it's kind of like, no, you serve a purpose. We need to accelerate revenue. These are the things we're going to give you. And we just want you to go out and crank out revenue and don't worry about anything else. So it's interesting the kind of box that puts you in when you're really trying to build a partnership that adds value for both parties. If you are kind of, just sort of walled off, it's really difficult to really bring as much value as you can into the relationship.
Well, in that example where you said maybe you were missing some information, you were given very specific instructions and you were saying, okay, I'm hired to do a job, go do it. And you think about some of the consulting advice you gave or something you may have actually executed on. If you would have had the full picture, you might have done things differently. But I totally understand, everyone's got to do what, he or she is comfortable with. And some leaders are not comfortable exposing everything. We just have found that the more you can expose and the more you can be transparent, the more successful you're going to be, if it's possible for you to really bring those barriers down.
So, Jen, one of the things that comes to mind for me is, why people go out, seek partners. And, I think of this in the context of buy versus build. Do I buy someone's expertise, capability, access into a market, or do I build it internally? Can you share some experience on how partners can help you to accelerate growth? And is that the right strategy? And why might you not want to go down that road? And I know that's a couple of questions all built into one, which is kind of my expertise, but
works for me. The more, the merrier. Yeah. So partners can be a really great way to test new markets for sure. When you think about it, let's say you're building a channel with a group of agency partners. Those agencies are working with their clients regularly. They're probably communicating with their clients daily, if not multiple times a day, depending on how kind of high touch of an agency they are. But those agencies aim to be an extension of someone's marketing team. And they are they're the consultant that's on the inside. They're like, when I go to my doctor, if my doctor says, Jen, you need to start taking this vitamin, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to start taking that vitamin, right? So they play a very similar role. So first of all, when you build a partnership, you can use a channel to get access to those clients. If you know that there's some sort of problem that you can solve for them, those agencies are going to be able to get right in and make that recommendation. And that can be really beneficial for you because it's not going to cost you a lot of money to get in. And then you can see, especially if you're expanding into a new market, you can see if there is traction there, if you're successful. And then maybe you decide you're going to grow an agency referral partner model and you're going to bring on other agencies. Or maybe you decide you're just going to go after that market directly, but you had the opportunity to sort of test the water with someone who was on the inside. So I think it's extremely, extremely beneficial. And I think that same methodology can work in a lot of different ways. I mean, it can work when you're talking about expanding globally. It can work if you're talking about going into another vertical. So it doesn't even have to just be if you're shifting your customer profile. It can be based off of a number of items.
In our experience, at least in my past life, you touched on something that I think is really important is international expansion. When you start talking about trying to go into markets that you haven't been in before and the value of those relationships and the access and the efficiency that they can make things happen in a market. But the one thing that I caught there that you'd said was that it wouldn't cost a lot of money. And I think there's also a perception that, well, it's the cheaper route is to just hire a partner. Like, we'll pay them a commission. It'll be it's a variable. So, it's not like we're going to have to go hire a team and have payroll and all the burden that goes with that. But that partnering is the less expensive option. And I'd love to hear what you think about that, because I actually think that though you may not have the same type of costs of building a team directly, that if you don't put the same level of investment in that relationship or that partnership, you kind of get it. This is just my opinion. You're going to kind of get out of it what you put into it. And I just would love to hear what you think about the idea of, and I think before you mentioned something about a CEO, what they look at and what they expect to get out of partnerships. And oftentimes, at least with CEOs that we deal with, some of them have that mindset of, okay, this is the better, faster, cheaper kind of option. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, because I don't know if that's always accurate.
Well, you're right. And partner programs need to be funded, and those partners need to be enabled. And ultimately, long term, it is more cost effective to sell through a channel, especially in SaaS. Organizations that sell through channel partners actually lower their customer acquisition costs. They increase their time to revenue. They increase their profits, gross profits. So, and they also improve their data quality. So there are a number, and that's research that was from an Aberdeen Group study from earlier this year. But when I was talking about it being cheaper, let's think about it from this perspective. Okay, let's say you believe there's an opportunity. There are some potential customers for you in Germany. Okay, and you currently have no sales team, and you have no one in Germany. You have no one on your team who speaks German. You have no marketing content or collateral. You've received a number of inbound leads that have come from Germany, and you've got a couple of customers, and you're starting to wonder if there's just traction there in that region for your product. You have a couple of options there, right? You can build out a plan internally, but you're going to have to focus on, localizing your website if you haven't already, updating any marketing assets, sales content, collateral, customer success. Are you prepared to support people in another language? Or, what about the financial elements? So there's a lot to think about. Or you can find a partner who is already there, who already has the business set up, who already has a customer base, and who you have a strong synergy with, where you can have a symbiotic relationship with that partner. That's going to cost you far less money to experiment in that new market than it would be for you to do it on your own. Now, if you discover that, hey, this is good and we've got good traction here, then yeah, you have to double down and you have to invest in that partnership, and you have to ensure that that partner is going to be successful, and that's going to require funding. But in terms of trying to figure out if this is the right path to go on, it's a much more cost-effective option.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that a lot of organizations run through is they inaccurately forecast what the costs are of building a team. And they look at a big number associated with a partner, whether that partner is in variable on the commission side and what you're comping out, or even in some kind of a retainer, if there's a retainer in the equation. But many times these organizations, they have unrealistic expectations about the cost. And you hit on a couple of different areas, Jen. You talked about marketing costs. You talk about technical costs from web development perspective. You talk about sales time and energy and resources. And I think that's one of the advantages of finding a good partner is you can leverage their expertise and experience and accelerate your path to growth through that expertise and experience.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the best thing about partnering, right? Because they've got that experience that's adding to what you have, and together you're stronger and you can be much more successful and go a lot faster together by pooling that knowledge. Again, as long as you're focused on a common goal, as long as you've got that symbiotic relationship with the partner is getting just as much out of the relationship as you are. And that's your key to being successful.
So one of the things you talked about earlier is this kind of, and I think Mike may have mentioned it, it's the focus on starting the partnership. And then you talked a bit about cadence and establishing a cadence. What's an appropriate cadence for engagement, maybe in the first 30, 60, 90 days of the launch of a partnership? And then how does that evolve over the next 180 days, 365, then moving into year number 2? What can you share as people start thinking about how do I design or think about the amount of time that I need to invest in the initial partner relationship?
I think, I'll preface this by saying every organization is going to be different, right? A lot of it's going to also depend on how much knowledge the partner already has of your product. So are you a company that's selling a software and your new partner is actually been a user of your software for a number of years? Or is this something that's brand new to them? So there's going to be a lot of variables. And you also need to recognize that the cadence you have for one partner may be different for another. So you might have kind of some things that are standard, but you're going to have to customize based off of what both partners what you're looking to achieve. But I would say a good rule of thumb is think about what it's like working with the sales team. So you hire a brand new sales rep. What do you do, right? You're probably spending that whole first day with that individual or having that individual shadow someone. You're probably actually working very, very closely, not leaving that person's side for the first week. And then things start to shift. The point is that you don't hire someone, put a laptop in that person's hand, say, there's your desk. I'll talk to you next quarter. So there's some kind of an onboarding that you go through. And depending on, your onboarding that you have internally is also going to vary based off of how technical is your product, what does your customer base look like, how complex is your sales cycle. All of those things play a role in that new sales rep's onboarding experience. So the same is going to be true for your partners. Just think of them as employees who don't work for you and don't work in your building. So it's going to be, more high touch, early on, and then less touch, less frequency as you start to mature, as that relationship matures. But that's also where technology can really help. And there's a lot of great tools that are out there now for partners to be able to interact on a regular basis with you and your organization, for you to collaborate, and so that you can have some great low touches without having to always be getting on a plane and flying across the country or, across the world to meet with your partners.
Jen, this has been awesome. Thank you for taking the time to join us on the podcast. It's I hope you enjoyed being on the side of not leading the podcast, but being in the hot seat, so to speak. I know one of the things you do out here in the Valley is you're active in a group called Girls in Technology. Can you talk a bit about that and share your experience there and how people can find out more?
Sure. I'd love to. Yes, I'm on the board of the Phoenix chapter of Girls in Tech, which is actually a global nonprofit that is focused on engagement, education, and really empowerment of girls and women who are passionate about technology. So here in Phoenix, we're focused on that at the local level. So what our programs focus on, both professional women who are either in or entering the high tech industry and maybe are building their own companies or working for organizations, but then also focus in the classroom and really working with other community leaders to expose more young girls to opportunities in technology and really help show them models, examples of strong women that have powerful careers in technology. And so we kicked off the chapter just a few months ago and really gearing up. We've already had a couple of different events offering some boot camps, different speaker series. Some of these are free, some come with a very nominal fee just to help cover our costs. And we're excited about it. Always looking for sponsors and places to host workshops. If anyone's interested, I'd love to hear from you.
Jen, thank you for the great interview and spending time with us today. Where can we find out more about you and what you're up to?
I'm pretty active on social media, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Jen Spencer, or on Twitter @Jen Spencer.
All right. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, Mike and Mike. And thank you for listening to the Catalyst Sale Podcast.